Schools Forum, the 5th of December. Lovely to have so many members here ready to start to represent the work that we do for Bracknell, for all the children, for the families there. So we've got all our papers aligned and ready to go. Before we start, we've discussions about some really big items. And hopefully I'm going to sneak in an extra AOB and tell you what that is at the end, just so we can think about what we have done to make a difference to children in Bracknell with our discussion. So all discussions are, and meeting is recorded and hopefully streamed right now. It's being conducted in accordance to the council's remote meetings protocol and procedures. Please use the meeting chat to indicate if you want to speak. I can see the chat function here, and then we can mute microphones when not speaking to avoid that horrible feedback loop. If you want to turn your cameras off, that's absolutely fine, because sometimes the picture and sound breaks up, but it's good to leave cameras on when we're asking questions of the officers who prepared papers. So we're going to go straight into agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. And we have had a few, Jamie.
Yep, I've received apologies from Keith Granger, Juanita Dunlop and Katie Moore.
Thank you. Welcome to those members who are just joining. It's just after 4:30. Welcome. So we are under agenda item 2, declarations of interest. And there is an agenda item 5 around schools budget. So I think there are a few colleagues who are going to have an interest.
I have an interest in item 5.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you.
And I do also have an interest in item 5.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much. So let's go straight to agenda item 3, minutes and matters arising. So we're going to go straight into the minutes and the matters arising. So I'm not sharing screen here. So we had set through the minutes, everybody who was here. So we had the school work forum planning, and we noted the report. We had asked, we requested about some information from you, Dwayne, on EHCP processes. That was 20. Would you be able to provide that to us?
Yeah, so the processes are all on the special needs hub, which is what we call the local offer. So I did put it in the chat, Chair, at the last schools forum. So it's all there for families to see, and they will be signposted to the local offer. And again, I'm happy to send out to schools the link to the local offer as well. But you know, they are all published documents, and they are all in local offer. So that's already there and been done.
Okay, so and I think the question that we had as a team was about best ways to inform about it. But yeah, so you're going to send that out again to schools, and we can maybe pick that up if we get feedback if that's not working. So we had an update on the school's budget from Paul, and we had made a request about the approach to single form primary schools in Bracknell, because part of what we feel to be presented on how they are being represented.
You want me to come in there, Chair? I mean, that's going to be a big piece of work, to be honest with you, Chair. It's not something we're going to solve in a week. So I've spoke to colleagues, Simon Kniefes, who's going out at the moment to schools to see what capacity we got out in schools. We have done the SCAP returns, that's gone into the DFE. I think it went in October, around the children in school and what's coming through the system. There is a bigger piece of work we've got to do about testing the methodology and the strategy, because that is, we have a strategy, a place planning strategy, and we will be in the process then of rewriting that strategy as well. So I think it's not a matter of just going out. It is a big piece of work that we've got to coordinate and pull together, but you know, be assured it's on our agenda to do, and I'm happy once we've done it to report back to the schools forum.
Thank you. I think I've missed an action under page 4, which was providing information about training provided to schools and support. Apologies.
Yeah, so just to give you an update on that, so I've pulled together at the moment all the training that's been on offer for schools from the Can Do website, which is free. That's all been pulled together. What I'm doing now is linking with other services within education that offer training, whether that be free or traded, to pull that together. So once, I would say 75% of that work is done. Once I've got the other 25%, then I'm happy then. Do you want that shared with heads, Chair, or do you want it to come through the schools forum? What do you want me to
I
do?
think that's would be good, because then we can see, it's and if there's other things that could be added, we can bring that back for our January paper, would be great.
Okay.
Then further down, we were looking at finances, and one of the actions was around the high needs block planning. If we look on page 5, so there was information about the parents with the HEP process, and then a paper discussing the approach to single form. I think that's all the actions that we had from last time. So, but it's important to keep on having that debate, because we've got agenda item 4 about the high needs block planning on there. Okay, so is everyone happy to agree the minutes? Thumbs up or not? Thank you. Fine, so welcome those members who have just joined. I can see some faces on the cameras, which is lovely. So let's go to agenda item 4, and this is to you, Dwayne.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So this is the paper I've brought to the schools forum in terms of the planning for the high needs block against the duration of the safety valve. So this planning will go through to 2029-2030. So at the moment, as you know, the budgets, we haven't yet to get released from the DFE, unless they've been released today, and I haven't seen, Paul, the sort of budget allocation. But what we do know that each local authority will receive approximately between 7 and 10% per head of the 2 to 18 population of increase in funding. They've confirmed the DFE have confirmed there's a £480 million increase in terms of funding core school budgets. And again, Paul will probably talk about budgets a little bit later on. What I want to look at here is actually the impact on the high needs block, obviously. When we sort of met in previous schools forum, we did give up a budget position in September. And that was based on the information we had at September in terms of spend. And we reported a 1.1 million overspend with a 2.7 million emerging pressure. I can report today that we've got a 9.4 million overspend with a 2.9 million overspend at the moment, and there is emerging issues equating to about 800,000. So that's taken then the sort of total overspend with the emerging issues into 10.2, or if I round up, 10.3 million this financial year. So as colleagues will be, that is not sustainable in terms of the overall budget position. So in terms of where we are, we've done a bit of data sort of looking at mapping against other authorities, and just for colleagues to be in terms of top-ups and other funding to non-maintained and independent providers, we are, out of 150 local authorities, we are the 3rd highest spender there. In terms of alternative provision, we're the 19th highest spender, and top-ups into mainstream schools, we're the 24th highest spender. In terms of looking, and as you know, I delivered the paper on the banding tool last week, and that banding last time, we met, and that banding tool only applied to maintained schools. So we've been looking as a council in terms of what other things we need to do in terms of things that are in the high needs block, and to make sure that first of all, that 10.3 million doesn't increase anymore. But moreover, what can we do for the duration of the safety valve? So initial areas we are looking into and we will focus our attention on is ensuring each block. So as you know, within the DSG, it is split into 4 blocks. That's the early years block, the central schools block, the schools block, and the high needs block. So we want to make sure that each block is paying for its own area, if that makes sense, that we're not transferring between blocks. So if I give you an example, that the early years block is totally funding the early years sector, and we're not transferring any money between blocks to pay for anything in the early years block. So we want to make them self-sustaining blocks, if that makes sense. Again, I've got to look at the specialist support services, because all those services, other than the behaviour support service, which is from dedelegated, are paid from the high needs block. So after Christmas, I've got people setting up meetings now. I want to set up workshops with heads to gather your views and to actually, say, what do you need, and actually how can we all together shape the services. The other thing we're looking at, and I did mention briefly, and Simon, a colleague of mine, is coming out to schools to look at additional capacity within schools, and really where we can create perhaps more provision within mainstream schools. And I know this is a drive within the current government as well, to make sure that the provisions are within mainstream schools, encouraging inclusion, but making sure the right level of support for children is there. The other thing we need to look at is the review of our special schools and the abandoned levels, to make sure that they are where they should be. And again, the other thing we're going to be looking at is post-16 pathways and bandings, and provision for children and young people there, and how we sort of perhaps supported internships and so on and so forth. So, there's lots of more work to be done, and there's lots more work we're going through. I just want to reassure the Schools Forum and my colleagues here that absolutely we'll work in partnership. This is, it's not something I'm going to do on my own, and we need to work together to shape the services we need. So we can't continue with a £6.2 million in-year overspend cumulatively by the time we get to the end of the 6 years. I mean, I can't do my maths now, but, that's a significant pressure what's on top of, because that's adding every year now. I can't take that 10 million out now, so that's putting the pressure on. So we really need to sort of start working on how we can sort of look at how we fund for our children with special needs, and how we can be creative within the funding that is available to us. So that's where I'm at the moment, and I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm absolutely committed to working with school leaders.
I will invite comments in a moment, but one of the things I was thinking when I was listening, and I think other leaders would agree, is that the Working Lives of Teachers and Leaders 2024 was only published around 2 weeks ago, and it's pretty bleak reading if people haven't read it, but it's saying about people in education and senior leaders reporting the highest amount of stress ever in a survey. And I think a lot of what the changes need to bring within the education system need to be balanced with the fact that education is the only public service really to have an open door. An open door to things. We don't have waiting lists. We don't have gaps and pauses. So it's really wonderful to hear that you'll work with us, Dwayne. We know that you are so passionate to help us try and get change, but the lack of capacity in specialist bases in places in schools won't be the only thing to fix this. Being responsible for and being castigated over things you can't control is incredibly stressful. Is incredibly stressful for all of us. So we would ask any member or anyone listening to help us drive change, because teacher guilt will only take us so far. We all need to work as a team to be able to control the things. I thought that the information you presented on us being very high within the statistical neighbours and across 150 other partners is something we should sit and consider. What can we do differently? What can we do differently? But my last thing before I hand over to colleagues is the excellent classroom management, and we know we have some amazing schools in Bracknell. Parents, please choose us. Please don't choose independent sectors. Let us at least let us at least present to you. But as always, it's a false economy to not support the most vulnerable. And that is what we're here for. We're going to have a debate about how and what we could do and what we could start to think about. So, Grant, you had your hand up first. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dwayne, for presenting the paper. So actually 2.7 on that paper, which is that statistical comparison, really interesting. But I always think about statistical comparisons that it's not the league table that's important, it's actually digging a little bit deeper. And I just wonder if work has been undertaken or if it's planned to be undertaken to understand why it is we are at the top. Because on one level, you could see that as Bracknell Forest is spending far too much money, those prolific schools asking the local authority for money, and there's local authority's got no control over its budget, which I think would be really unfair on both schools and the local authority. But equally, number 150 on that list is either really doing a bad job for its local children, or actually it's doing an amazing job, but in a different way. And I think we need to learn, we need to understand why we're at the top and what the other local authorities are doing towards the bottom. And I just wondered whether, no, my first question, I've got another one, but first question was, what is the local authority doing to learn what other local authorities are doing better than us? Have we undertaken that, or is it just we just wanting to present the fact that we are really spending a lot of money? Second of all, 2.9. So I was really heartened to see that list, Dwayne, because I, for a long time, agreed with you that there are too many EHCPs, and the system is broken. I actually believe that they are far too easy to get. But the reason that we have lots and lots of people asking for EHCPs is because people have decided that the only way to access a service and to get the support they feel their child need is to get one. Because all of the bit that used to exist between what the school was doing and an EHCP has gone. And that isn't Bracknell Forest's fault. That's austerity and lack of investment and all the other stuff. And until we put that middle bit back in the old days when I was a Senko and we used to have School Action Plus, and there was some, if you needed a speech and language therapist, you could find one. And if you needed an occupational therapist, there was one. And there was mental health support. There were people that would come into school and do all things. Until we put all those things back, EHCPs are going to go up and up and up because desperate parents are going to request them. And schools are going to request them because we need the money. And it comes back to that point a little bit about the extra money. So the Chancellor talked about £1 billion extra funding for schools for special educational needs. I went and checked what the autumn statement was, and in fact it was repeated by the Regional Schools Commissioner in a presentation to Greenshaw Learning Trust. So there is some money flowing to Bracknell Forest at some point. I know you don't know what it is yet, and what it will be, but my plea is this, and this is why I'm heartened about what you said. My plea is, please don't just use it to pay down the debt. This is an opportunity for us to invest in services. You said it before, and I've heard Paul, invest to save. If we could put back in the services that have been lost, the SALTs, the OTs, the mental health workers, we will bring down the EHCPs and then we will save money. This is what we've got to do. But I just worry that we see too much of SEN at the moment as pounds and pence and saving money and cuts and pay down the debt. And I guess also my plea is to Councillor Bailey to use whatever levers of influence he has, is to make sure that the government do not bring this money with a load of strings attached that mean we have to basically pay off debt and that we cannot invest in services. So, Dwayne, I'm really heartened by what you said. I was really heartened by that list in 2.9 because I think those things are reflected in what I've said. And I look forward to updates as we go. But I'm hoping, Councillor Bailey, that you can, through the local government association, through your contacts in Parliament and the government, I hope you can put that message that this cannot be a missed opportunity and just about the safety valve debt problem. It needs to be about investing in services. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And
David, maybe to come back on a couple of points there.
that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
So, Grant, first thing you spoke about was, what do we do in terms of learning? So, I'm part of the LGA. I'm part of a team they trained, the first team they trained actually to look at local area provision for children. And I've undertaken peer reviews across local authorities. I meet with LGA across all the local authorities. I think it's every 6 weeks, and we, certainly take from learning. In fact, the team from the DFE wrote to me the other day about our practice in one of our areas, that they viewed it as, and that was my colleague Manjeet, where they viewed what she has done around the independent sector and negotiating rates was an example of good practice. So we absolutely do share. And I do want to come into context, we're in Bracknell Forest, but every council I've worked in, this has been the main subject. So it's not just a local, we have to recognise it is national. And I think the government are hearing. I know I spoke to Councillor Bailey the other day, and 6 times in one discussion, SEND was mentioned by 6 different sort of MPs. So, I know the conversation is there. When we talk about education, health and care plans, for me, it's not about measuring how many we got and how many we haven't got. It's making sure the ones we have in place are for the children that absolutely need them. And making sure that parents have confidence and our teachers have the skills as well to be able to deliver the graduated approach. It isn't about taking anything away. It's about saying to families, and I think over the past years, I can go back to the days, Grant, when I was a SENCO and I used the School Action Plus, and we would have children on School Action and School Action Plus throughout their own schooling. We didn't necessarily go for a statement because we knew the needs could be shifted up and down between them two. What I always say, wave 1, wave 2 interventions. I took away last time from the schools forum in terms of the graduate approach. I met with the DFE, and I know the green paper, the AP green paper and the action has come out, and I did have a discussion that is on hold at the moment. So therefore, I've asked my staff, and I will ask to actually write what should be ordinarily available to outline for schools so they all are aware what should be ordinarily available, what we deem as interventions at wave 2, so that we have got a sort of benchmarking for us to work as a borough. In terms of the 1 billion that's coming in, Grant, that's more than welcomed. And you're right, we can't just spend all that on the overdraft. What we've got to look at is, how we use some of that creatively. Because, I would go away and reflect. And, I've been out to schools. I've seen the level of needs you've got in the schools. So we do need to upskill staff. Not all staff, all teachers of children with SEND, but some of the complexity is coming through. We do need that more specialist extra teaching. And I certainly will go away and reflect on that. I can see Councillor Bailey's hand up, so I'm going to be quiet and see if he wants to come in. Chair.
No, yes, sorry, I might. Yeah, thank you. I've heard clearly what everyone is saying. As you would expect, SEND is high on my radar. I speak with our MP at least once, if not twice, if not 3 times a week about this. I'm badgering him left, right and centre. It's been raised as an issue at PMQs, I think, for the last 6 or 7 weeks. Peter Swallow, the MP, has mentioned, he's spoken with Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State. He's also spoken to Wes Streeting about the health input in terms of finance for EHCPs. We know the system is broken. We know it needs reform. We know funding is coming. I'm reliably informed as much as I can be that everyone will get sorry, bear with 1 second. Everyone's going to get at least some real terms increase. We don't know the details yet, but as soon as Peter knows, he's going to come back to us. But all I can say is we're hearing what you're saying, and we'll do. I also heard your point, Liz, about the stress that teachers are under, and I really, really understand that. I keep making that point myself to the Secretary of State for Education. So thank you. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Roy. Paul, you had your hand up to comment.
Sorry, it took a while to get my mute off. Sorry about that. Yeah, just to come back on a couple of things. Obviously, there was a lot of questions there, but I would like to stress that there has been a huge amount of Investor Save been delivered by the council over the last few years through the extra SRPs. We've been the places we've been opening there, the plans to further develop those. We've also got the special schools, the SEMH school, the ASD school. So it's not all council money, but it's all part of a plan that's there about Investor Save. So we have done a huge amount there, and it's still still to be felt, to be quite honest, obviously in a lot of areas. So that is something we're very keen on. I think you mentioned something about the therapies as well, Grant. I mean, none of those funding budgets have been cut at all or touched during this process. So they are still protected at the levels we had before. And just the last comment I'd like to say on the funding side about the extra £1 billion, and just it is highlighted in paragraph 2.3 there. Yes, we haven't got the full details yet, but the information that supports that extra £1 billion does actually set out that a big chunk of that money is actually picking up some of the extra costs that are being funded this year through separate grants. So a lot of that money is being maintained, which is great, but a lot of it is not new money. So the new money side of it is looking at between 2.3 to 3%, which is significantly below those headline figures. But the cash amounts, that all that sort of stuff is correct. It's just when we get to the bottom and what's left after those sort of pre-commitments already, it's going to be lower than maybe some of the headlines out there. So I just wanted to clarify those sorts of things. So there's a lot of areas touched on there, but just a couple of points on the finance back there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any other colleagues want to step in before we move on to Paul's item on school budgets itself?
Yeah, just me. I will be setting up workshops after Christmas, and I just encourage leaders to come so they can actually be part of what we shape. And if we do look at something and I put a case to spend to save, that they part of drawing up that with me. Does that make sense? So that we know, because I'd have to measure the impact of that as well. So happy to send them invites out after Christmas.
Yes, thank you. We'll make sure we share that to all our colleagues. So let's move on to item 5. Paul, it is to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah. So this is an update on the 25-26 school budget. So as we've said before, and I think we said again tonight, that we're still waiting for some of the detailed information, particularly around how much our costs are going to be in terms of funding allocations to schools. We've had a recent update in terms of how much money the local authority is going to get. So we know how much income we're going to get per pupil. Obviously, what we don't know yet is how we can translate that into what the final pupil numbers are and what the extra supplements, the extra pupil characteristics that those children have and that drive extra money through the formula. And we're not expecting to get that until the 16th of December at the earliest. So we're not in a position really to say whether we've got a good settlement, an okay settlement, or not such a good settlement. But we're edging closer to getting that information. And obviously the next meeting of the forum on the 15th of January is the final one we've got to set the school's budget before the statutory deadline. So all the final decisions will be coming to you next time. So it's quite a thin paper, to be quite honest, at this stage of the year, but it reflects the information we've got. So this one in particular is it's split into 2 parts really, and they both sort of, relate to the 2 financial consultations we've taken this term. So the first one was taken in October, and at the last meeting of the forum, we weren't able to look at some of the recommendations that came out of that time. So we're presenting those again to get those decisions on those, because they are specific to maintained schools or primary maintained schools as well. So there's a couple of questions around whether they continue to support the dedelegation of services for primary schools. Also whether all maintained schools support the ongoing contribution to council statutory duties. Both of those were supported 100% by all respondents in the consultation at that time. And there's a couple of other questions around for all school forum members to comment on, that is specifically around the setting the minimum funding guarantee. So that's the minimum change in funding between 24-25 and 25-26. And also how that particular, if there's a cost arising from that, how that will be financed. So those are the areas that we didn't pick up properly. We couldn't completely pick up at the last meeting, but they're there for a decision tonight, please. And then the other one relates to the last meeting of the forum. We brought together the information we had at that time. There's an opportunity to review how the calculation is made to do the block transfer, the top slice from schools to the high needs block. So we were previously advised that it wasn't possible to get a contribution from schools on the minimum per pupil funding level. What has now been advised by the DfE is that you can make a request to fund at different rates. So that opportunity was presented to the schools forum at the last meeting. It was agreed that we do a consultation with all schools to get their views. So the last meeting was only 4 weeks ago, so we haven't had a lot of time to do that. So as highlighted in the actual paper in your pack, we would have to send out a supplementary paper to give you the results of that survey, and that was sent out on Tuesday. So hopefully you all had a chance to see that. So that's basically saying, do we change the way we calculate the top slice? That's all it was doing. It's a one question consultation, and I'll just quickly go through the replies. In summary, there's more information in that supplementary item. So we had 11 school responses, which is 30% of the total number of schools. Of those respondents, 8 were in favour of changing the calculation to include those schools on the minimum per pupil funding level. That's 73% of respondents. 3 were opposed, and that's 27% of the respondents. 7 schools were directly impacted by this proposal based on the 24-25 data. Obviously, a lot of these things can change when we get the data for 25-26, but obviously that's the best information we've got at the moment. And 4 of those schools made a response. 1 was in favour, which is 14%. 3 were against, which is 42%, and 3 did not respond, which is another 42%. So as I say, there's some specific comments from those schools that are adversely affected by the potential change, and they're set out in that supplementary paper as well. So there's some information in there for you to have a look at as well. So it's basically asking the schools forum to consider whether you want to make the change or not, and there's the information we had as feedback from schools. I think that's all I'd like to say on this paper then. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before we go to recommendations, let's have some comments from our team. Grant, start us off, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just remind members that I have a conflict of interest in that Crown Wood is one of the schools that was affected, but I'll also share that I actually did vote in. My response was that I was in favour, and I want to share that because I did read the responses from my colleagues at Warfield, College Town, etc., and I 100% agree with the points they make. But at the same time, I felt that out of solidarity with all of the other schools in Bracknell Forest, that Crown Wood should pay 0.5% along with everybody else. And the reason I wanted just to say something about it is that I think it's sort of £13,500 based on Paul's calculation. And I take his point that might change. And we often, I think, when we talk about these things, we talk about pounds and pence, but that's actually makes a real impact in school. That £13,500 is half a teaching assistant that a vulnerable child won't get access to. That's less nurture. That's less forest school. That's fewer resources for our SEN children. And that's reflected across the entirety of Bracknell Forest. And that isn't Bracknell Forest's fault. I know that isn't the intention of officers. They are being buffeted by the big picture, just like everybody else. But I think it just always bears saying that money coming out of schools at a time when I think the real terms increase this year will be about 0.5% on school budgets, will make an impact at a time when schools are already struggling with resources. And I think we just need to keep on saying that. It does have an effect on children. It does have an effect on families. It does have an effect on teachers. It makes it harder to do the very thing that we want to do, which is to support our children and young people. And I just feel that just needs reminding every so often, not to the people sitting here, because I know you all know it. I know, Dwayne, we've talked about it. I know you know this, and I'm not, it's not a criticism at all, but I want to say it so the people out there watching that, and it's for Councillor Bailey again to hear it, because the one thing, and I agree with you, Chair, that as educational professionals, we are really good at papering over the cracks. We are really good at just dealing with things. Everybody on this call will have some point in their career just gone, there's a toilet blocked, I'll get the plunger because the caretaker's not here. We just get stuff done. And the problem is, if we keep doing that and we keep forgetting to remind our political masters that this is actually really affects real people, makes it much harder, they will forget about us. We've done that before to our detriment, and we mustn't let it happen again. And that is why I'm so passionate about banging on about Safety Valve, because I continue to believe it strips money out of schools and makes it harder for us to do the job that we all want to do, which is to support young people with SEN, not to mention all of the other children that need help that don't have SEN, that we can never get to because it is so hard in our schools. So please do not take this as a criticism for Bracknell Forest Council. I just think we need to keep on saying this so that people hear and we do not let them forget about us, because they've done it too often. Thank you.
Thank you for painting that picture. There's lots of nods, Grant. Thank you. Other colleagues, step in. Help us paint a picture with our words. Trudy, start us off.
I'm sorry, I can't work out how to put my hands up with the little fingers at the bottom, but we found it really hard to come to the decision. And unlike you, Grant, we actually put a no, simply because we were so worried about losing any money. I mean, I said to the governing body, which we had on the 28th, because I couldn't make the decision with my chair because I was really torn. Because yes, I wanted to support the wider, you know, like our colleagues, like you said, Grant, but at the same time, you're sort of thinking that's another £11,000 out of the budget, which you rightly say. And it was a really tough decision, and one that I felt bad about putting a no to, but it is that conflict, isn't it? And it's really tough. So yeah, it wasn't an easy decision, and it's a hard one, isn't it? Really hard. So thank you, Grant, for sharing your views as well.
Really, thank you for your comments. Anyone else want to step in, make comments before we? Okay, let's have some recommendations. So 2.1 is to agree, after taking account of the school's responses to the November 2024 financial consultation on the calculation of the school's block transfer / top slice to the High Needs block, whether the calculation is updated to include those schools on the minimum per pupil funding level. We need to have a vote. I'm going to stretch my screen so I can see everybody. You're not on camera. We're representing all schools, not necessarily our own. Do we agree or do we disagree? Agree. Okay, it's passed. And thank you very much to the honesty given in that. So let's go to 2.2. We've got to agree that after taking the account of the school's responses to the October 24 financial consultation, the general finance matters. So just for our maintained primary school members only. Some smiles from people there. So you're going to help us decide whether we're going to de-delegate the budgets continuing for the services requested by the council. Both colleagues, thank you. So that's passed. And then for all maintained school members only. So we are looking. So I'm just giggling at some things in chat, guys. I will read that afterwards. So the item for all maintained school members only, a £20 per pupil contribution continues to be made by maintained schools towards the cost of delivering general education related statutory and regulatory duties. It's not the waves, thank you. Fast. And then the third one was, as in previous years, funding rates for de-delegated budgets are increased by the average rate of increase per pupil funding, currently estimated at 7.5%. Some nods, smiles there. So this is for all forum members. So get your smiles and waves on, or you can use the thumbs up functions. So to set the minimum funding guarantee for mainstream schools at the lowest permitted level of -0.5%. Anyone in assent? Anyone agreeing? I can't see people agreeing to that. Okay. So looks like we're going to have a little bit further discussion on that. So the cost of financing any impact from the minimum funding guarantee is met from the deductions to school receiving the highest increase funding, typically those above the average rate of increase. Are we agreeing or not agreeing? We agreeing? Can't see any people agreeing to those two, so we're not agreeing to 4 and 5. Then we have 2.3 to note that Due to the ongoing delay in the release by the Department for Education, the detailed information relating to the 25-26 financial settlement in schools, it hasn't been possible to present the budget proposals for Bracknell Schools to the forum until 15th of January 2025 meeting. Thank you very much. Paul, please come in.
Yeah, sorry to come back to you. We do need to make some sort of decision on that minimum per pupil funding guarantee, because it's part of the requirements in setting school budgets for next year. So that, if I remind you, the parameters that the DfE allow us to do is either it's got to be between -0.5% and 0%.
Okay.
And the consultation responses, which you can see at paragraph 511 on page 18. At the time, we didn't know what the actual rate was going to be at the parameters. So we assumed it was going to be the same as 24-25, which was 0% to plus 0.5%. So we set the lowest level for 24-25, and we are proposing to adopt that again for 25-26. Again, one of the reasons why that's probably something that we would encourage is because of the tight financial settlement, and the more, I can't call it generous, the higher level of you add to that particular guarantee, the more it's going to suck out of the system in terms of other money that would allow us to allocate funds to the schools in accordance with the national funding formula. So obviously you don't have to make the decision on the percentage put in front of you. We didn't know that right when we did it with the schools, but the responses was that we should set it at the lowest level. But obviously that's something for you guys as forum members to reflect on. But we do need to know whether it's what it is between 0.5% and 0%, and how we then deal with that in terms of funding it, whatever cost that may be. And we don't have any inclination of what that could be yet, because we haven't got the data to run those calculations.
Caroline's going to jump in a moment, but if we just again familiarise ourselves with what's on page 18, as Paul said, 511, should the minimum increase in per pupil funding be set at the lowest amount permitted by the DfE, estimated at nil, and then our decision is -0.5. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about that in a minute. Caroline, jump in while everyone's.
That was my point, really, was that the consultation said estimated at nil, and now we're being asked about -0.5%. So it doesn't feel that the consultation responses match the proposal.
So, Paul, are we answering today, if we put it to the vote about the nil, the question we've asked?
Yeah, the decision is down to schools forum. All I'd say back to Caroline is that we put the rate that we were expecting when the consultation came out. It wasn't confirmed that those were the parameters.
I understand that, but I
Yeah.
just think we can't take the consultation responses as a go ahead from other colleagues,
yeah.
that -0.5% is agreeable to them. I'm not sure that that's acceptable.
So let's put the question to you again. So we're saying this is a question for instead of 0.4 item for all forums. So instead of saying -0.5, I'll say 0 at the end. So to set the minimum funding guarantee for mainstream schools at the lowest permitted, well, it's not the lowest, at the level of 0%. Are we happy with that wording? The level of 0%. Okay, nods and thumbs up from people. Okay, we're happy to do that. So anything else on that item? No?
Can you do number 5 as well, please, then, Chair? We need to decide if there's a cost to that. Is it going to be funded from the schools with the highest percentage increase through the allocation of the funding formula?
Yeah, so the question is, the cost of the financing of any impact of the MFG is met from the deductions of the school receiving the highest increase in funding, typically above the average rate of increase. Are people now willing to?
Right. I don't know what the alternative is.
I think that
The alternative would be that it'd be a deduction out of the total budget available in the school, so it'd be taken off everyone. So those with low increases or decreases would also contribute to it as well.
Sorry, forgive me. I know I'm perhaps being a pain, but at the moment, I don't know any of the numbers associated with this, and I know that you don't either. But that makes it very difficult to make those sorts of decisions when we don't know what the impact is. It could be nothing. It's unlikely to be nothing, I'm sure, but
it was £84,000 in the current year. So it's
between,
in the scheme
between saying 0% and -0.5%, what difference is that going to make to the budget, and how much are we going to have to claw back from where, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I can't accurately give you an indication of what that amount would be, but the two options are you either take it off those schools with the highest percentage increases, or you take it out of the amount of money available to allocate to everyone, so everyone contributes to it, because there's less to go through the normal allocation process in the formula. Part of that money is top sliced to meet those schools getting that guarantee next year.
Oh, can you guide us to what the questions have answered? So are we saying the response is 92% of that very same question on when we look at 511, should the cost of the financing be met from the deductions receiving from the highest percentage increase? So 92% of our colleagues have.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And unlike Caroline, I hear that we don't know the numbers. How much would that impact various people? Yeah, it's a strange place to be in the decision. So let's put that question to the vote again. So the cost of the financing, any impact from the minimum funding guarantee met from the deductions of schools receiving the highest increase in funding, typically those above the average rate of increase. 3. I haven't got everybody. Okay, yeah, okay, passed. So a very difficult thing, and thank you very much, colleagues, for jumping in and answering that one. So I do apologise for giggling before I started the vote, but Roy Bailey made a very funny comment in there about the idea of head teachers using sink plungers is actually an imagery we want to keep on building. People ought to know that that's what we face in our daily reality sometimes. So let's move on to item 6. Scrolling. Okay, we are on to the initial proposals for the 2025-26 early years budget and funding formula. And this is over to you, Cherry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we're in exactly the same position as Paul, as we don't know our numbers yet. We were hoping to be given our allocation by the end of November, which to my mind was last week. However, we still haven't had our numbers given to us. So the purpose of this report, so the proposals set out in this report are in line with the information that we currently have available regarding financial settlement, which is limited, and our statutory guidance and comments from our providers arising from the November consultation. So similarly to schools, we had an early years consultation out from October till November. It's a 6-week consultation to all of our providers. We currently have 181 funded early years providers across the piece of childminders, preschools, nurseries, and school-based nurseries. We only had a 20% response to that consultation. So again, not dissimilar to the numbers that Paul was commenting on just now. The main questions we were asking were twofold around our formula. Last year, due to all the changes, we didn't have time to actually consult on the formula itself. So we adopted the previous formula across all of our entitlements, which has posed some problems over the year. So the two queries were, one was around the deprivation supplement, which we have to have. That is the only supplement that we have to have within the formula, and we consulted on whether to continue to use the IDACI score or whether to remove IDACI and use EYPP as the only deprivation supplement. And 91% of respondents agreed with the proposal to remove the IDACI, and 77% agreed with the proposal to reduce the funding rate for the deprivation supplement, and 91% agreed with a new deprivation supplement for our targeted 2-year-olds. So those are our 2-year-olds who have an eligibility criteria. So they are our lower income, it's income related criteria, plus some of our other vulnerable children, so children looked after, etc. And 80% were in agreement to use any unspent money from the previous deprivation supplement for our targeted 2-year-olds. So that was quite an overwhelming response to that one. The other main proposal was around our quality supplement. Now, we've had a historic quality supplement. Most other local authorities I'm aware of have removed that supplement from their formula. At the moment, providers, again, we've got 41 providers in receipt of the quality supplement. across the range of provider types, and you have to have a level of qualification to receive that supplement. So in the response, 73% were in agreement to remove the quality supplement, and 76% to reallocate the funding, which didn't quite correspond, but that's the percentages we've got. So those were the main things that we consulted on, and those were the results. Sorry, just going through. So then obviously we would be able to look at more of the base rate, you know, a higher percentage in our base rates than there is currently. So that would benefit all providers. I don't know if anybody's got any specific questions around that.
Happy to open questions to colleagues. I've got a few comments. Over to you, Caroline.
Sorry, it's just I don't have a dog in this particular fight, but it just seems to me that the quality supplement, whilst I understand the drawbacks of it, surely we want trained professionals working with our youngest children in their earliest years and recognition of that. Why would you train your staff if there's no additional benefit to you? And how do parents have that understanding of the quality of the staff that are interacting with their children? This is probably not a discussion for this forum. I just feel that the quality supplement is at least one measure of the fact that you have got trained and highly qualified people in your setting. And it seems that what else is there? Or are we just going free for all, really?
I think from a parent point of view, I'm not sure that they would always know the qualification levels of the staff in settings. So, and I think, you know, the other side of it, we look at our quality around Ofsted judgments, which we can agree or disagree with Ofsted judgments, but they are there for a purpose. And I would say that, you know, as with schools, I know that schools are 100% good or better. We have one group provider who's not good yet. So and with our childminders, I think we're about 96, 97% good or better. So again, the quality from an Ofsted point of view is comparable across all provider types, regardless of qualification levels.
So where's the incentive from providers to upskill their staff?
I think there was previously, when there was significant additional funding for that to take place. That stopped a long time ago. So some people do continue to develop their staff, others don't. You know, I can't say there is or there isn't an incentive. I think that you know, in the sort of research that we've done across other local authorities, the majority do not any longer have a quality supplement.
Okay. I can see Tim's raised his hand.
Yeah, sorry, just where is that money if it's not used to promote, you know, staff training and promote qualifications? Where is it going? Sorry, Cherry.
Oh, there isn't any anymore, Tim. There used to be. We used to have a graduate leader fund, which was for exactly that purpose. That stopped many years ago. So there isn't that. We don't get any money for supporting qualifying staff.
Sue, I can see you've unmuted, ready to share thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I can talk about this as I've got two settings. It is a bone of contention, this subject. Cherry and I have had long conversations about this. I think one of the issues we also have is that the Department of Education are not keeping the checker list updated. I have a practitioner who is level 6, but her level 6 that was studied at Reading, and Cherry and I have endlessly been trying to get this qualification put onto the list, and it is still not on there. So on face value, if we're inspected with Ofsted, she is not a full and relevant level 6, but Cherry and I know full well, and this just isn't Reading University. I'm aware that there are several universities, and actually trying to police this now, for want of a better word, for Cherry and her team is becoming incredibly difficult. From a provider's level, when we've been recruiting very high quality staff at EYTS, QTS, and we've provided, you know, really high hourly rates for them. It is a slight concern that obviously if we're going to lose that quality supplement, how it's going to be sustainable. But I do agree that putting it into the base rate for it to benefit all providers is the right thing to do. I totally agree with Cherry.
I think as well, so if I can just come back, sorry Liz, on that, when we've looked at, I mean, obviously we don't have the actual figures at the moment, as we've said, but when we've based it on the current rates, and as Paul's hoping there's going to be an increase in funding for us as well, but based on the current funding rates, it's only 4% of those providers that currently receive the quality supplement that would see a slight decrease in their funding, and that's without any increases. So, you know, whilst I know any decrease in funding for anybody is an issue, and I'm not saying it's not, it is less significant than we had initially thought it might be. And hopefully with any increases in funding, there won't be a decrease, but I obviously can't guarantee that until we get our allocations.
Thank you very much. Richard.
Hello, just 2 points. I was just thinking, as an academy school, I'm not 100% sure of this, but I believe that maintained primaries with a nursery class would have to have a qualified teacher in there. And as that is a requirement for them to do that, part of that is the quality supplement then funds those quite small numbers, I would imagine, of settings that have to have it. It seems to me to be unfair that that is lost from a setting that is legally required to have that quality. It's not a choice they can mitigate. And my other point is just looking at the respondents on the consultation, it seems it's very, very skewed. Over 70% of the respondents are childminders. And therefore, that taking the consultation responses, it does seem to be biased and supporting, I know, a particular group of early years providers. And I know you have to take the consultation as you read it, but we can see that over 70% of that is childminders who may well potentially benefit indirectly from this.
And whilst I absolutely appreciate exactly what you've said, Richard, I suppose my frustration would be that the consultation went out to absolutely everybody. I actually looked today to did we miss anything, but I can say we've sent out 3 emails to the whole sector, you know, every provider type. It was on the Can Do newsletter. I mentioned it at the head teacher briefing as well as our provider meetings. We held a face-to-face consultation meeting for people to come forward to have that. So whilst I appreciate exactly what you're saying, we tried really hard to, and I think even at the head teacher briefing for those people that were there, I said, if you don't consult, please don't moan about the outcome, you know, because that's all we can do. We base it on our provider responses, and there are some childminders who do actually get the quality supplements, and you know, so yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. I understand all of that, but we did try very hard for 6 weeks.
Thank you, and we all do appreciate that, Jerry. It's a sample in there. I do have a dog in the fight. I think that's probably my favourite new term of the. Thank you very much. So, our youngest children, do we know that they're developing their neurons? They're setting their path for later in life, and I think anything that can increase the money so we can overcome any deprivation they could have will pay dividends. Exactly that same point about it's a fallacy not to invest in this. So, Cherry, are you happy with the amount of money that we've got at the moment, and what would you like to be?
Am I happy with the amount of money we've got at the moment? That's an interesting thing. I think what is coming, what is really open, and I was up in London at a meeting with a lot of other early years colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and one of the feedback that we were giving then, and DFE were in the room, was that our under 3s funding we feel is good and appropriate. Our under 2s funding is very good. What is lacking is the 3 and 4-year-old funding, and for most of you sat around the room, that is the issue. That we do believe there should be an increase for that. I mean, we're hoping there will be an increase, but obviously at the moment we don't know what. But again, you know, if anything can be done around early years funding, I think it is to increase the 3 and 4 year old rate. And I think at the moment, again, in relation to the quality supplement, so if say a day nursery has the right qualified person, they would get the quality supplement for every single hour of funded education. So even for those youngest children with a very high hourly rate, they would also get that 14p on top of that as well, rather not just their 3 and 4 year olds. So, you know, and that's 14p extra on top of an already good hourly rate. So yeah, I would say what is required is a higher level of funding for 3 and 4 year olds. And I'm sure Sue and those people with nurseries around the room would agree with that as well.
Corey, would you be able to pass that thought on? Because we don't want to not invest. That really pushing for the 3 to 4 year olds funding to match. Okay, so any other comments from colleagues? Right, let's make some decisions then. So, recommendation: the school forum considers the council's initial proposals for the early years for the funding formula and budget for 25-26 and agrees 2.1 the proposed revisions to the early years funding formula and the allocation of the 25-26 early years block budget as endorsed by the early years providers through their consultation feedback for the following elements. So 2.11, the deprivation supplement as detailed in point 5.25. Hands to show. Thank you. 2.11 passed. The quality supplement is detailed in points 5.26. 1, 2. Fewer, not passed. That, in line with the requirements set out in 5.12, the council will retain the permitted 4% of the total funding to support providers carried. So that school forum notes final 25-26 early years block budget, early years funding formula proposals and provider funding will be presented back to us in the schools forum for agreement in January 2025. Noted.
I suppose my only question, I don't know, Paul, if you want to come in on this as well, again, back to the quality supplement, it's, you know, what next really? If we're not agreeing with that proposal, what a forum suggesting we do at this stage.
Okay, let's think on our feet. Are we happy to halve the amount of money? Okay, happy to halve the amount. So we would normally be giving, and it's talking about for a 4-year-old 14p. We're happy to say, right, let's halve.
It's 14p across all. It's 14p per funded hour for every child in a setting where somebody has the relevant qualification. That is the case.
Happy to say 7p. Is this just a decision we can't make, Paul? Trudy, I can see your hand waving.
Sorry, I really can't find that thing at the bottom. I mean, like Cherry said, so I have the quality supplement because I have a teacher in my nursery. But as she also said, because the base funding will hopefully go up as it's shown, then it would be negligible really in terms of my income. It's better that I get paid more for those children than the quality supplement in itself, and that would be across the other sectors as well. So am I right there, Cherry? That yeah, I am, aren't I?
Yeah, so the money that at the moment that is set aside for the quality supplement will go back into the base rate.
Yeah,
so everybody
funding
would benefit from that.
Yeah.
And also just taking on board, because I forgot to mention, sorry, about the central retention, because obviously at the moment we're allowed to centrally retain up to 5%. But from April, it's only 4%. So that's an additional percent going into the providers. So again, that mitigates some of the changes.
Thank you for that additional information. So with the basis of that additional information and not changing the percentage, because we don't think we'll be able to manage those numbers, let's take that vote again. So the proposed revised of the early years funding formula and the allocation of the 25-26 early years block budget as endorsed by early years providers through their consultation feedback that we for the following elements quality supplement as detailed in points 5.26. Thank you very much. Passed.
Thank you.
Okay, so my AOB, because I think we are on to the end of the meeting. I will just hold you for 2 more minutes, colleagues. What have we done to make the lives of children in Bracknell better for families? What have we decided today? Just have a think. What have we done? If you want to share, that's fine. But what have we done collectively to try and make the lives of children better?
I think everyone responding to the safety vow, to be fair, that all schools contribute to that. I think that is a fair thing that we've done. And I did feel really guilty putting no on my thing. So I'm glad it got passed.
I think our honest and open debate is a gift. So thank you very much for challenging yourself. If there's no other comments, have Grant. Thank you.
No, well, I think the other thing is that I think that very first paper, which acknowledges the strategy and the things we're going to work on, as I really do agree that the things that are on that list are things that will make a difference. They may not, they're not going to be immediate, but I think actually setting out our stall about what's going to be important going forward is key. So I think that is positive.
Thank you. There's no further comments. I hope everyone has a lovely build up to Christmas. Hope it's stress free, and we'll see you again in January. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.